Okay, here we go. Spoilers ahead for the episode Lux from Doctor Who Season 2, because obviously we're going to get into it. So, Doctor Who, Lux, it happened. This personally was my most anticipated episode of the season from the initial trailers, simply because that very first trailer of this season showed an animated character climbing out of the cinema. To me, I think that's awesome. I always thought that was like a really cool concept for something like Doctor Who to explore, because obviously Doctor Who, you can kind of tell infinite stories, and after The Devil's Chord went pretty far with the kind of, not just the fourth wall breaking, but music in general being a concept that can be messed with. I definitely thought a animated character coming out of the cinema was just exactly a perfect follow-on from that. Funnily enough, it's also in episode 2. I was right in one of my previous videos. I said this season was going to follow a very specific routine or schedule that the first season followed. You know, episode 1 is the off-world spaceship episode that introduces everyone and it's lighthearted. Episode 2 is a god and it messes with, I guess, the fourth wall and the concept of a TV show. Episode 3 is the big think piece that'll go down probably as one of the best ones. You'll see. Episode 4 is the Ruby-focused one set on Earth. Again, pretty much already confirmed with that one. Episode 5 is going to remember that the Doctor is black, although this episode did too, but like that's going to be the plot of the episode. And again, funnily enough, that's happened. Episode 6 is a guest writer writing a different TV show with a Doctor Who twist. Before we had Bridgerton, now we have Eurovision. And then the finale is hopefully not nonsensical, but it is a Earth-driven finale where the stakes go insane. Last year was nonsensical and terrible. This year, hopefully a lot better. But if I'm to compare the first 2 episodes of Season 2 to Season 1, then we are on track for an absolute all-timer season. Because quite frankly, I love the Robot Revolution, and spoiler alert, Lux is a 10 out of 10. Both of which massively better than Space Babies and The Devil's Chord, and I did like The Devil's Chord quite a lot. Anyway, the episode itself has the Doctor and Belinda pick up pretty much from the second we left off, with them trying to get home. In fact, the Doctor even tries to land on May 24th, 2025 on Earth again. They're still wearing the same clothes they were wearing on Miss Belinda Chandra, so it's quite nice to see that kind of, I don't know, stronger season arc. Unlike the 6-month time skip we got between Space Babies and The Devil's Chord, this one feels a lot more like Flux in a way, that there's one main goal. Like, it's not just background hinting, like the bees disappearing or mention of Harold Saxon or the crack in the wall. You know, every episode their goal is to try and get back to Earth on that exact date, and along the way they get stuck into other adventures. Kind of like Flux, and to be honest, I have my issues with the story of Flux in general, but I really like the idea of it being one big story, and there just happen to be like little side quests they go on. They have to fight Sontarans, they have to fight angels and all that. So, yeah, I'm happy. I think this is looking like a really good season arc, series, storyline, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it starts off like that, and then Belinda and the Doctor land in 1952 Miami, and pretty much straight away they acknowledge the fact that neither of these two characters are white, and it is America. It's also 1952, but quite frankly, not being white in America is still not very safe. But I guess the point is that, there were laws about segregation back then. You couldn't have black people in the same cafe as white people. And this episode touches on that pretty nicely. It doesn't get too bogged down in it, and that sounds wrong to say because of the subject matter, but that's not what the story was about, and I think it very appropriately acknowledged the situation they were in without making that the focal point. It was quite dark at times, I did enjoy the fact that a lot of these characters didn't really care, and they were happy to break the rules to talk to these non-white characters because, well, as individual humans, they didn't really care. And I don't know, I just thought that was quite a nice inclusion that, even when the world was a lot more racist, not every single human was. And I'm not saying that, that makes everything that happened in the 1950s okay. I just think it's a nice idea to say that actually there were still good people around that time. But yeah, the Doctor acknowledges that maybe it's a good thing it was 4 a.m. and no one could see them, and then him and Belinda encounter a little bit of racism. I also find it interesting now that following Dot and Bubble, the Doctor realizes straight away why there might be complications landing in certain places, which I don't think he had done by Dot and Bubble. He was still very new to being this Doctor, and I guess at that point hadn't encountered any kind of discrimination. You see, I think it was a really interesting way to take that kind of narrative. But of course, that was only a very small part of the episode, and dear God, there's a lot to talk about. So, Lux, he's called Mr. Ring-a-Ding, but it turns out he's Lux, the god of light. I kind of saw this coming. we've known for a long time, based on some leaks, that there was going to be some kind of harbinger, some kind of god in this episode, because when the letters fall off the sign on the outside, yeah, that was seen during filming. I personally thought that Mr. Ring-a-Ding himself wasn't going to be a god, and it was going to be like the projectionist or something. So it was a nice twist that it was Mr. Ring-a-Ding himself, but yeah, God of Light, I was thinking God of Visuals, very much the visual accompaniment to the God of Music from The Devil's Chord. I'd be interested to see if the toy maker had a third child, and if there was one more, like the God of Smells or something, you know, all the senses. Because I've noticed already a lot of people online asking why Sutek didn't do the giggle when the toy maker did, and Maestro did, and now Lux has done. I just assumed that's because Maestro was an offspring of the toy maker, and I'm assuming Lux is as well. So it's really a toy maker thing, the giggle. So just being a god doesn't mean they have to giggle, you know. That was my interpretation anyway. I very much like the sort of accidental addiction narrative that came with Lux, because he just wanted more power, he wanted more light, he wanted all the light in the world, and it ended up killing him. But he felt good when it happened. There's a hell of a lot you can read into that, but I do like the idea that what he wanted more than anything ruined his life, but he didn't even realise it because he was enjoying it so much. I think that was a fun way to end that story. And one big thing I want to bring up about the fact that he's a god is that it wasn't a world-ending disaster. It was a lot smaller scale, and I think that's obviously very, very good for episode 2 rather than the finale, which, you know, the Devil's Chord kind of felt like it could have been a finale given the stakes of everything. So I really like that Russell T Davies has kind of toned it down a little bit with the gods and kind of scaled them back and said, yeah, these are dangerous bastards, but it's not a season finale. It's not an Avengers level threat every single time. So I thought that was really appropriate, the way they handled him. He was just some twat that needed killing. He also happened to be a god. I definitely think the whole Pantheon of Gods thing is making a lot more sense now. Well, not that it never made sense, but it feels more cohesive, it feels more like it has direction. And obviously, you know, this isn't the last we're seeing of the gods. I have my theories, there are leaks, I'm not going to go into it right now, but yeah, I mean, obviously, there are more gods coming, there's no question there, I assume in the finale. But yeah, I'm a VFX artist. I'm so happy with Doctor Who right now. I've said this before, you know, I don't think TV needs to look this good, but if it does, I'm going to enjoy it. And oh my god, Mr. Ring-a-Ding looked insane. Obviously, 2D characters come to life in a 3D, well, real-life filmed world is gorgeous. You know, Roger Rabbit, things like that. Absolutely love that kind of animation. But Mr. Ring-a-Ding, man, he looked fantastic. The way he interacted with the world, like, it looked real. Oh, I don't know, it just... Man, that was so good. I was so happy with that. And one particular detail I absolutely loved about him is that occasionally you could still see those like flickers of kind of artifacts you get on film reels. So while he was real and he was made of light, he still had that slight flickering of the fact that he was on film. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a nice fun detail, because you could argue maybe it doesn't make sense because he's now made of light and he's real. I don't care. He is a cartoon character from a film reel turned real, so you know, if he's going to maintain the look, the animated look he had, then he's going to maintain the film reel look as well. But talking about the animation, when he went 3D, and of course when he went 3D, that was so cool. I absolutely loved just how insane they went with it. I really thought, you know, 2D character come to life, that's what we're getting. When he started going 3D and started growing, I'm so happy that they kind of went all in on this episode. And there's something else we're going to talk about, but you know, they went all in on this episode, there's no denying that. But I'm very glad they went all in on it, because this is a very cool concept that I don't think they're going to explore again, you know, the idea of a character coming out of the screen. So to go so hard on that and do it to the way that they did, it was incredible. I'm very, 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 very happy about this. Just one extra thing to note about that sort of 2D to 3D transition that Lux makes. Obviously, it looks fantastic in the show. Like, it's a really scary effect and he looks horrific. That's definitely like a reference to the fact that 2D cartoons look fantastic, and then redoing them but 3D or live action and it looks like shit and it's terrible and it should go back. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty funny mini commentary on things like that. Because yeah, as soon as he became 3D, he looked absolutely disgusting and horrific, but he looked fun and nice and cool when he was 2D. I've said it at the beginning of the video, this is a 10 out of 10 for me, and not just from concept alone. they could have messed up this concept very, very easily. But no, as far as I'm concerned, this hit every single mark it was aiming to hit. And yeah, I can see this going down as a fan favourite for a long time, like Blink. Which moves me swiftly on to probably the biggest thing, the biggest talking point, and probably the most polarizing aspect of this episode. The Doctor's in a TV show. Or he was, briefly, for a moment, when he was in the film. Now, firstly, that whole sequence of them being in the film, from being animated to turning themselves three-dimensional, incredibly fun, because how often has Doctor Who received complaints of characters feeling two-dimensional? I just thought that was a really fun middle finger to people to say that. But I just thought that was fantastic, and it looked brilliant the whole time. You know, I was surprised we got this much animation of them, really. Like, we saw this in the trailer, them being 2D, but I did imagine that would be like a 10-second segment, so having a few minutes of them being animated, and then pretty much for the rest of the episode they were in that film reel, I thought that was incredibly cool. And the effects of them, you know, pulling the film reel down and everything, and they do it so much that they think they've got out of it, and suddenly Mr. Ring-a-Ding is playing games with him again and tricking him and trapping him. Really, really fun. And then they left the TV show, and like I say, I think this is very polarizing. I personally absolutely loved this. Now, a lot of people who are going to be watching this video, because let's be honest, if you're watching this video, you're probably a Doctor Who nerd, and if you're a Doctor Who nerd, you probably know what I'm talking about. But this did leak. It leaked a few weeks ago, actually, along with a bunch of other things that at some point during the episode it would cut away to Doctor Who fans watching and critiquing the show. Now, that's the very last moment. That was the end, when the credits rolled and they realised they were still alive and they were giving it, you know, a 7 out of 10, whatever. Which is wrong. These Doctor Who fans are idiots. It's a 9 out of 10 minimum. But my point is, I just want to say this now to anyone that's read the leaks. Whoever was leaking all of this stuff, I have my theories. Well, no, I don't have my theories. It is Russell T Davies, but we'll get to that. They are leaking very, very broken information. Okay? The information leaked about episode 1 was already public knowledge. It was in the magazine that came out the following day. The leak about Lux was only the last 2 minutes of the episode, not the entire 5-7 minute segment of them kind of destroying the entire show's lore. That was never mentioned. Russell T Davies himself has said episode 3 is an important one, and he has said episode 3 is an unexpected sequel. Just bear with me when I say there's a chance the rest of those leaks aren't true, okay? To make this the ultimate meta storyline, which I wouldn't put it past him, he deliberately leaked a few weird things early on, including some late game spoilers, and then turns around and none of that happens because he's aware that things are leaking. I don't know, I think the fact that next week's episode is exactly what is leaked, and like that's come true basically, Russell's pretty much admitted it, I don't think that necessarily still confirms the rest of the leaks. But we will see. Anyway, my point is, Doctor and Belinda, they go out of the TV show and they talk to their fans. Obviously it's hilarious, they all say Blink is the best episode. They're wrong. It's The Silence in the Library and The Forest of the Dead is the best episode. Either way, very, very funny that it wasn't a Russell T Davies episode. I'm glad the Doctor acknowledges that Boom was the best of the last season as well, because he did bring that up. But yeah, these Doctor Who fans, a lot of people are going to be offended by this because they seemed nerdy or a bit kooky or a bit weird. This is not the greatest show in the galaxy. This is not a middle finger to fans. This was a love letter to the fans, really. Yeah, okay, we all come across as a little bit weird sometimes, but for the most part, this was a very kind acknowledgement of the Doctor Who fan base and how in a lot of cases they've saved Doctor Who, and they've saved the Doctor. Case in point in 2005, really. During that entire Wilderness era, after it got cancelled, the fans kept it alive. You know, the demand for more Doctor Who kept it going, so that when Russell T Davies started writing Doctor Who again in 2005, you know, it was still big enough to succeed. And I think having written this just after Flux, when the future of the show was very much in flux, this is a very interesting commentary I'm seeing from Russell T Davies about this. It kind of fits in beautifully with the current politics of the show. This was written and filmed long before they thought season 3 wasn't going to happen, which I really bloody hope it does if Doctor Who stays this good for the rest of the year. I think they will commission it, quite frankly. Obviously Doctor Who's not going to end, because if Disney pull out, the BBC will just make it like they used to, so it's going to look a bit worse, but it's still going to exist. But yeah, sorry, I'm getting off topic, and this video is already getting pretty long. I didn't script this one. I wanted to try just sort of a review of just talking into a microphone and seeing what comes from it, so this might be the longest one I ever do, because I might go back to scripting them anyway. Anyway, I personally really like that in this self-contained episode, the Doctor was in a TV show, because he kind of is and he kind of isn't. You know, in the context of Lux, they were stuck in that film reel. They were stuck in a TV show. Like, they were put in a TV show. So in this context, in this universe, in this setting, we can safely say, oh yeah, well, these fans came into existence during this. As they explained, as soon as the Doctor and Belinda broke out of the TV show, they were going to stop existing. Obviously they didn't, but we'll get to that. So it's kind of like his entire life up to that point then suddenly became a TV show, if that makes sense. So it's not, I don't think the episode was trying to say, oh, Doctor Who's always been a TV show. It's trying to say, hey, you've lived this life for however many thousands of years, or billions if you're so inclined. Guess what? Imagine if every single day of your life was an episode of a TV show. Well, this is what it would look like. That's what I got from it. So I don't think this is quite as lore-shattering as some people might be feeling. Obviously everyone's going to take this episode differently, and I completely understand if you're not into this storyline, but I definitely think this was an appropriate way of doing it. However, obviously at the end of the episode, those three Doctor Who fans, they talk about the show, about the episode itself, and they give it a rating. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think this is the case. Firstly, there's the obvious that, hey, this was just a fun cutaway reference, but they acknowledge the fact that they were still alive and maybe they shouldn't have been. My theory from this is that this is a subtle hint to the audience that, hey, guess what, this isn't over. This is what it's like when the Doctor's in a TV show, you know, he has fans watching them and all of that stuff, and they were supposed to stop existing when he left the film reel and was no longer in the TV show, and the fact they're still watching and critiquing the episode at the end, to me, tells me, keep watching, they're still in a TV show. Not so much that they were put in a TV show in Lux and then they're still there, more so that they've been in a TV show possibly forever. A lot of people might not like that, and I can still totally see that not happening. I just think that little extra reference at the end, to me, screamed that they were still in a TV show, and that actually that was a bit of a bigger thing than it seemed. Obviously, Mrs. Flood showed up, said that the show is ending on May 24th. I get it. It does annoy me because the finale is May 31st, but I understand that it's a two-part finale. You know, the first part's going to be on May 24th. I just feel like that whole the show is ending thing would hit a lot more if it was actually true. Like if it was actually the finale. Mind you, they filmed this over a year ago. So, you know, to actually pull off timing something this well, given that there were heavy rumours of season 2 being delayed, it's pretty impressive that they've got it this close. But yeah, Mrs. Flood again showed up. She didn't look at the camera this time, but she absolutely broke the fourth wall. You know, she was saying, you want to watch something good, look at that show, it ends on the 24th of May. She was saying that to another character, but of course she was referring to the Doctor as a show, the TV show, all of that. And for the first time, we've seen her out of time, which is really interesting because so far she's just been Ruby's neighbour. She showed up in a few different places, she was on the roof, and then she was Belinda's neighbour. You know, it's a year since Ruby's season, so she absolutely could have moved house to next to Belinda. Obviously, all of this movement and behaviour is unusual, to say the least, but it was all earthbound and it was all contemporary. So her now finally time travelling is interesting. It kind of supports one of the leaks about who she might be. Not going to say it, but if you know, you know. I still have my theories that she has been the cause of the leaks and that she is the god of fiction. And she is writing herself into Doctor Who. I don't know, there's a lot to think about. I think we need some more substance from Mrs. Flood, quite frankly, because so far it is just, ooh, who am I? I'm mysterious, you should care about me, but I don't have a reason to beyond the fact that this is Doctor Who and I know there's going to be some reveal. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want there to be a reason why I desperately need to know who she is. Basically, she needs to kill someone in the next episode. She needs to do something bad. You know, Eye Patch Lady, for example. I wanted to know who the hell she was. That was insane, Eye Patch Lady from season 6. The crack in the wall. I mean, Christ, man, that angel stopped existing when they went into the crack. Mrs. Flood, so far, it's been 2 seasons, and all she's done really is looked at the camera and just teased that something bad's going to happen to the Doctor. She hasn't even said, oh, I'm going to kill the Doctor next year. She's just said Doom is coming to him. Sorry if I'm stating the obvious here. Doom comes to the Doctor every year. Quite frankly, if Doom didn't come to the Doctor every week, what's the point in watching? He's always got trouble coming his way. I don't know. I'm still intrigued by Mrs. Flood, and I'm still not sure I 100% believe the leaks. I can see those leaks not coming true now, following this episode, because one of the fans, I'm afraid I can't remember any of their names, but one of the fans from Lux even made a reference to the fact that their appearance leaked online, which is incredibly funny. But yeah, I think that was deliberately leaked. I think Russell T Davies has been deliberately leaking certain elements of the show to tell a really meta storyline, and I just think that those late season leaks are they're in flux, in my opinion. I don't think they're actually necessarily true. There's one specific leak that is kind of a joke among fans that, that's always the leak, that's always the rumour. So I think it would be really funny if that comes true and they like really play on it, or it's not true at all and that leak is just a kind of piss take. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, obviously I've just talked about like the big things that happened. The only other things I really want to bring up, this was a brilliantly shot episode. I loved it. Belinda is a top 3 companion already. Her dynamic with the Doctor is fantastic, and that sort of rocky relationship they had in the first episode, that's growing wonderfully. I'm very, very happy with that. The Doctor, again, getting a bit more doctor-y. He's the Doctor through and through. I'd be really sad if he does go at the end of this season. I really liked a lot of the heart that was in this episode. Even down to the 5 minutes we had with those Doctor Who fans, there was emotion in them. And, no one's crying at that because you've known them for 2 minutes. It's not the most, it's not like losing a character you've been with for the whole episode. But it felt like there was a good reason for them to be there other than just to go, oh, look at this funny thing we're doing. Like, they did feel like properly fleshed out human beings that had lives outside of those scenes, as did Mr. Pye. I mean, that was fantastic. The idea of Lux bringing back his dead wife, manipulate him and trick him and keep him on side was fantastic. A really very fun way of experimenting with that narrative device of characters from film becoming real and solid again. It wasn't just Mr. Ring-a-Ding. There was more, and they had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, generally, I just thought this was an absolute banger of an episode. I spent most of this video talking about the big things that happened and kind of the overarching Doctor Who story. But to me, it was a 10 out of 10. Like, I can't say anything I would have improved about this episode, really. I just thought it was absolutely brilliant from start to finish, tremendously entertaining. Incredible concept, and they actually delivered on it to perfection in my eyes. So I guess really the biggest talking points, other than just saying, oh, this was good, oh, this was good, oh, this was good, are the bigger things, Mrs. Flood and the fans and all of that, which I think I've talked about to death now. So yeah, I'm incredibly excited for the Well. Next Time trailer looked great. I cannot wait to see more of the Doctor and Belinda together. They are a fantastic duo. Lux was an absolute banger. Russell T Davies, have you found your source again? I bloody looks like you have. Also, next time you want a fan to be in Doctor Who, call me. I'll do it for free. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you watched this far, that's very, very cool. Feel free to subscribe. Stay for more if you like these videos, because I'm going to be reviewing every single episode and then doing God knows how many other videos about Doctor Who, so it's worth sticking around. But until then, stay wibbly, stay wobbly, stay timey-wimey, and I will see you in the next one.